boy, do trailers for movies really frustrate me. On one hand, I totally understand that you need to advertise the movie and get people into the cinemas, so you gotta show them some of the juicy stuff. On the other hand, I am pretty sick of seeing the entire third act of movies in the trailer, when you just simply don't need to put that much in. Just a sliver, just a little slice of the pie. Some of that sweet juicy stuff, get it in there. The whole cake? I don't know about that. You're kind of ruining the film. Like, if I wanted to see the film, maybe I was going to, but then I see the trailer and I'm like, oh, you just saved me $25 and an hour and a half of my life. I saw the whole movie in 3 minutes. It's not good for this TikTok generation. I say that like I don't have the app and it hasn't melted my brain. All I'm saying is, sometimes marketing in a trailer can be frustrating, especially when you see it again and again and again. And you're like, I want to stop watching this trailer, please? Because maybe you see the trailer once and you're like, wow, they showed maybe a bit too much. But you kind of forget you got things going on in your life and all that stuff. And then you see it again and again and again and again and again. And you see it, the same trailer with the same spoilery third act stuff for like 5 months. And you're like, okay. I've not only seen the movie, the entirety of the movie, in 3 minutes, TikTok style, but I have now also seen the movie too many times. I don't like this movie now. And guess what? I haven't even seen it yet. Oh, on a completely unrelated note, I saw the movie Speak No Evil. Hey guys, I'm Jackson. This is my spoiler-free review for the new horror film, Speak No Evil, an American remake of the Danish film from way back in the day. You remember the times of 2022? Yeah, this movie is an American remake of a European film that came out 2 years ago. And in a lot of ways, it's exactly what you would imagine that would be, but somehow a lot better. But in some ways, exactly as bad as you would think. In one particular instance. Despite the fact that I did feel like I'd seen the movie and it had nothing to like offer me, I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. It is super engaging, it is enthralling, captivating, thrilling. If you haven't seen any of the trailers, I recommend just going into this blind. Don't see anything, don't watch anything. In a lot of ways, probably don't listen to this. I mean, keep the video playing on mute, obviously. Like, subscribe, all the thingies or whatever, but you really just don't want to know anything, because it's the type of film you love to just put on, not know what the hell's going on, and then that slow burn, the slow kind of menacing, kind of threatening, just kind of underneath the surface vibe of the film is going to be really effective, because you just won't really know how it's going to play out. And it takes a long time to get to anything kind of paying off in the third act. But this film feels like a real great testament to the idea of it's the journey, not the destination. So the film focuses on a burnt out, tired couple who are in a very unhappy stage in their marriage, and their kid who's having a lot of emotional problems, and they're dealing with some really intense stuff at the time. And then on holiday, they meet this charismatic, sexy, carefree couple and their kid who's also going through some emotional problems of his own, and they bond on holiday, and then months later, the sexy, charming couple invite the unhappy couple to their isolated farm house out in the wilderness. You know, those beautiful places you'd love to visit where there's no cell phone reception. But if you're in a film that I would describe as a thriller psychological horror film, sometimes you just kind of wish your phone would work. The film is a slow burn psychological drama. It takes ages to kind of pay off in the third act, but I honestly feel like the first 2 acts that are slowly ratcheting up this tension and slowly building up to this third act are the more interesting acts. The first 2 acts really play with the idea of social etiquette, social politeness, and then kind of twist it into cowardice and twist it into all these really interesting things about how people kind of just deal with other people and how they just politely just accept stuff even though they don't really want to. And I feel like the best way to describe this film and not spoil what happens in the back half is that we've got James McAvoy, and he plays one of the sexy, charismatic guys on the couple, and he carries the film. He's essentially the main character. He is loud, he is confident, he is arrogant. You almost kind of admire and respect how much he just knows what he wants from life, and he takes it, and he lives that certain way. but then that character kind of tiptoes between being very confident to being just very arrogant and obnoxious and rude, and it just tiptoes this line very well. And he plays someone who feels on the surface very charming, very sexy, very likable, but there is just this simmering anger and this simmering just unknowable odd feeling underneath it all. And you just don't know what exactly it is, what exactly is going on behind the mask that he appears to be wearing, but sometimes the mask slips and that anger and that creepy psycho weirdness just kind of surfaces every now and then throughout the film. And he just plays that line so well. James McAvoy is so captivating in this film. Darkly funny at times. There are some really great moments of just really uncomfortable, awkward, almost The Office style awkward moments of just him and his wife doing such outrageously unacceptable things at a dinner party, or just doing things where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, he's a bit boyish and loud, but he's taking it too far. And the other couple just not really knowing how to deal with it and just being really awkward and kind of cowardly with how they react. Like at one point, James McAvoy 100% knows that the other wife from the other family is a vegetarian, but he cooks and kills their golden goose and he feeds her the goose, the best part of the goose. And just the passive aggressive, forceful politeness and charm that kind of veers into just like toxic, angry, just kind of meanness. And it just, the lines blur so interestingly in those first two acts, and how it says and shows so much about a certain type of person and says so much about a certain other type of person, and how it comes to the forefront in these two families, I just found to be really rich and interesting and just thematically juicy. Man, I wanted to eat some of that goose. God damn, it looked tasty. As a thriller horror film, I think this film does one thing really interestingly in how it plays with the cliche tropes of the genre in a way that kind of works thematically. Like, they do things that usually in a film you'd be like, oh, that sucks and is so annoying. But in this film, it's like, oh no, that's like the point of the film. And I think that's maybe the most interesting aspect of this film. And without really kind of spoiling what it is, it really comes down to the tired horror trope of dumb characters making dumb decisions that don't work for the story. They just are like lazy writing things to have the plot do things. Like, the plot needs to happen and something needs to happen, so characters just make impossibly stupid and dumb decisions. Now, in horror films, it happens all the time, and it really is just how you're vibing the film, whether or not you accept it or not, really. But in this film, it is done in such an interesting way, where there are some ripping your hair out, infuriatingly dumb character moments that are just like, oh, just why would you do that? And you know it's going to happen before it happens, and it just happens. They just do the dumb things, but it doesn't come across as dumb characters who are being lazily written. It comes across as very thematically rich and interesting because it is the point of the film, and it is that they are just being incredibly socially polite and socially awkward and just letting a thing happen because they're just so socially polite. And then that twists into cowardice where they just let things happen. Just imagine the vegetarian who just accepts eating the golden goose or turkey or whatever it was because she's just so socially awkward and polite, and she's like, well, I just don't want to make a fuss, even though she's a vegetarian and she's told them that she's a vegetarian. She does not want to eat the meat, but she just does. Imagine that, but like taken to the extreme in a horror thriller setting stuff. It's so good. I found it so compelling and interesting. I absolutely loved that the sexy, charming characters that potentially maybe something's going on. No spoilers here, but it's a movie, so yeah, something's going on. They are at times more likable, and then obviously that turns at a certain point, and then our couple who we're meant to root for and not likable like at all at times. Like, the movie starts and Scoot McNairy, he's super unlikable immediately. Like, he feels like he doesn't love his wife at all. It feels like he kind of hates his kid, but it's like a really awkward moment, and you can understand like a little bit why he feels that way, but he's never painted as like a hero. And I really thought that was a really interesting way to set up a type of movie like this. And for so much of it, you really don't know how it's going to play out and what is going to happen. There are a couple of twists and turns in the third act that if you've seen a movie before, you will see coming a mile away. There was a little wrinkle to one of the twists that was like a little bit different to what I expected that I absolutely loved. I thought it was really, really interesting. Not overly surprising, but just like oh, okay, I thought we were doing this, but we're doing this. Like pretty much the same, but a little different and a little fresh and interesting and captivating and scary and all the good things. But I do think once the third act really kicks off, it kind of falls into a couple of horror tropes that I feel like is pretty generic and uninspired with how it kind of plays out. And I did do a little bit of research into like how the original film from all the way back in 2022, the Danish film, how that like plays out at the end. And yeah, knowing how that plays out and how this plays out, I feel like all my issues with how this film doesn't kind of like hammer home, it doesn't commit to the concept of what the film is trying to say and what the film is trying to like do and say about society and about certain people and really commit to that. And knowing that the original film does 100% commit to that and that this in a lot of ways is just the most Hollywood version in the worst way possible of an ending. And it can be interesting in its own way, and I didn't hate it at the time, but I was kind of like, oh, I kind of feel like it should have done this, and that thing that I wish it had done is exactly how the other film ends. And so I think that's pretty disappointing. I feel like it kind of almost kind of forgets what the movie is meant to be saying and doing, and kind of just does a different thing. And I think people might enjoy this ending, but I feel like if you know what happens in the other film, it's pretty disappointing. And it's just so Hollywood in a gross way. It's just really weird and horribly ironic in the worst way that a film that's remaking a film about social politeness and cowardice would take the most cowardly option out and just try and be super polite and like socially acceptable for an American audience. And it just feels very cowardly. And it's like, oh, your ending misses the point of the movie. Classic. But despite my issues with the third act, I absolutely love this film. Genuinely thought it was so good. James McAvoy is exceptional. And the first two acts are totally worth the rest of the film. And the third act, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. I just think that maybe it could have been better. I'd give this film a rating out of 5, but I refuse to conform to the social norms of YouTube reviews or whatever. I refuse. I changed my mind. I'm a coward. I give this film 4 out of 5.